You come in the door from the end of the school day and you have to get right to it. It's very hard to say, I'm going to stop and just go play with my kids for a long time because you feel like you don't have the time to do that.
Hey mama, are you feeling lost in motherhood? Overwhelmed trying to do it all of the time? Well, I invite you to join me on this journey to find ourselves in motherhood again, to ditch the mom guilt and get that support from a mom friend that you've been looking for. I'm Jessa Ray, a work-at-home mom of 3, and my mission is to help moms thrive instead of survive. And you're listening to Caught Up in Motherhood.
Welcome back, mamas. I am so excited to have today with me a new guest, Lauren Mora, and she is here to talk to us about motherhood and feeling overwhelmed and that mom guilt when it comes to spending time with your kids while also just doing everything else that we have to do as moms. The running around, running the house, running work, businesses, however, and whatever that you have going on your plate right now. And to deal with that mom guilt and deal with those personal feelings, to be able to spend more time with your kids and find that balance a little bit more. And she created this great community, and she's going to talk about that too, which I think is great. She's got this village that she talks about. So I cannot wait to hear more about that as we go through the conversation here. But before I get ahead of myself, as I already am, Lauren, can you first tell us a little bit about you and how you got started doing and advocating for moms in this way?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here today. Okay. So I was born and raised in New Orleans. That's where I'm raising my kids today. Went all the way up through school, got my first job in the corporate world, as I think so many of us who are millennials did.
Yeah.
So that's where the main part of my career is in healthcare IT. And I rose up very quickly through that role, and I was in strategic sales. So I had big quotas, big hospitals to deal with, dealing with the C-suite and helping them with their strategic plans and how to execute it using technology that we sold. So my husband and I decided after several years that we were ready to come back home. He's from New Orleans also. So we moved here with our jobs, and the market changed quite a bit then. And I found myself pregnant for the first time. So I made the decision that I wanted to get off the road because that job was predominantly travel based. And I started looking for a job in New Orleans, and this market here is just a very unique one. So I never really did find another big company that I loved, that I wanted to be a part of. So we were talking one night, and we said, well, what if I did my own thing? So I started thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, which I had never thought about before. But it took several years to figure out what it was exactly that I wanted to do with that. But I did love food a lot and health. And so when COVID hit, I was furloughed from the job that I currently had in New Orleans. And I was like, well, guess this is a great time to do it. So while I had an entire country on lockdown and a baby who was less than 1 year old, I decided to start my first company. So it sounds like perfect timing, right? But I actually started a healthy sauce company. It was organic sauces that were veggie packed. So my target was busy moms during their weeks to how to have really easy meals that tasted good and were really good for you. But I delivered all these sauces, and the conversations with the moms that I delivered to every week was like, we're so busy. It turned into little mini therapy sessions. It was like, we're dying. We need help, and my kids at that point were 3 and 4 and almost 1. They were very young, and they were starting to get to be really in the active stage too. 2 of them were not really babies anymore. They were toddlers. And so I just started thinking man, there has got to be some moms out there who has figured out this stage of life, because it started to feel very overwhelming, and other moms were telling me they felt the same. So I just started to do a lot of research around what's out there? How do I approach this phase of life to where I'm not running around like a chicken with my head cut off all day, every day. And I found a lot of productivity tools and time management strategies, and they just didn't hit home for me. So I started playing around with several things in my house and came up with some things that really moved the dial in a very easy way. And so I just thought, I feel like I need to turn this into a program and get other moms involved and build a community around it, because I know a lot of other moms are feeling the same way that I am. So I started Rally the Village, and here we are today.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people can relate to that, like the
Yeah.
becoming mom, moving, not new job, but starting over after baby and having those issues, especially during COVID and the lockdown stuff. Like similar boat for me, where that's when I started my entrepreneurial journey, was right before COVID hit. Like I was in the process of learning and figuring it out and got like my first client, and then the world shut down. Like, oh, thank God, at least I got one. And then, moving on with that and growing and
Right.
changing. But I think that adds to like all these new challenges that come up when you're learning how to be mom, and then all of a sudden you have another one and then another one. Because you had it sounds from their ages that they're pretty close in age.
Yep, they
So
are.
that in itself is always a lot when you go 1, 2, 3 with having kids. And I did this similar thing. Like mine's 4, almost 2, and then 10 months. So they're all really close as well. So very active households. And then trying to run businesses on top of it.
Right.
So Lauren, you said you created some processes around your own home because you were looking online for some and they weren't necessarily working for you and what you needed. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about what that looked like for you, like balancing working and creating those processes for you?
Sure. I kind of did it accidentally at first. But when we went into lockdown, I had a kid in pre-K 3 and one in pre-K 4, and then the baby, of course. And my husband went back to work to his office pretty quickly after the lockdown because he was alone there. So he went to go work. So I was by myself with the kids all day. And it was, as you have witnessed yourself, it was pandemonium and purely just chaotic every day. So I put a structure down for the day, and it wasn't like a very strict schedule, but it was sort of a flow of how our day was going to go. And there were some milestones that we hit every day throughout it. And then I started a list of very easy and fun activities for them that I could reference, just because I'm really bad at coming up with activities and fun things to do off the cuff, like in the moment. I just am not that kind of creative mom. So having a plan for like what I was going to do the next day with them was such a lifesaver. And I mean, they were so young, their attention spans were small. So we didn't like hit 100 every day, but it saved my sanity during that time. Well, fast forward, I sort of forgot that I did that, and I was running my sauce business. And then when I started having these like new sort of thoughts about how I was going to approach this phase of life, like I was speaking of, it was like, okay, at first it was really complicated. It was going to be like big goals for the family. Everyone was going to have goals, annual goals, and we were going to break it down into habits. And it was going to be broken down into daily things that you could check off and get the little dopamine hit from checking the boxes that we all love to do. And then one day I was like, this is so convoluted and complicated. I'm not going to ever follow this, and nobody is either. So I sort of scrapped that. And I am a really big proponent of functional medicine. And if anybody doesn't know about functional medicine, the core tenet is that they look at the body as a whole and then try to find the root cause of the problem of what's going on and hit it at the root. And so I just had this light bulb moment one day of like, I need to do this with my life. So that's how I started thinking about it. And that's how I still think about it today. It's like, what are the root causes of why me and other moms are feeling so overwhelmed and stressed every day? And let's hit it at the root and in the easiest way possible. So that was like the genesis of how I started to create all the things that are now in the program and that I use in my house.
That's awesome. I love how you're able to take your own experiences and kind of turning it into something that can help other moms like that and finding those root causes and issues that we're having at home. I think I have to laugh a little bit, like when you're talking about the goals and the plans, like that's so corporate.
Isn't it? I know. It really takes a long time to get the corporate
I think
out
I
of you.
did something similar because I was in HR, so I was doing like SMART goals. Like my 4-year-old does not need a SMART goal.
Yes.
It's just so funny. Like you're so used to that mentality and that kind of problem solving. Then all
That
of a sudden,
corporate
like, pivot.
mindset.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to come out of you.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good to it, but yeah, that corporate mindset does not work with kids.
Right.
But I will say I loved your idea of planning the events ahead of time, like those activities and those crafts, so you're not coming up with them off the cuff right away. Like that is such a great idea because my kids want to do things, they want to be active. It's like, okay, what am I going to do? And then
Right.
standing there in like the craft closet, thinking about it, like, okay.
Well, and
What can I
also
come
in the
up
back
with?
of your head, you're going, also, I'm busy. Like I have to cook dinner right now. I don't have time for
Mhm.
this. That's how I felt. I just was like, I'm constantly moving around and doing things for our life to keep it moving forward. So it was like, I kept telling myself, I don't even have time to sit down, which is like, I mean, that hit me really hard one day. It's like, I'm not even
Yeah,
being present with my kids as much as I want to be because I'm so busy.
right. Absolutely. And figuring out how to do both
Mhm.
is so hard. So with that, can you kind of give us what we can do to kind of counteract that a little bit, like finding that time and that energy possibly to do those activities with our kids, like when we're still like in our head, like I need to do dinner, I need to do the dishes, I need to do whatever. How do we spend the time with our kids and have that energy to do it with all that going on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's the most important question. So, I mean, that's how I was. You come in the door from the end of the school day and you have to get right to it. You have all of the house chores to do, the cooking,
Mhm.
it's very hard to say like, I'm going to stop and just go play with my kids for a long time because you feel
Right.
like you don't have the time to do that. And your mind is whirling around with all the things that have to get done. So I would say, here's the first thing. All of our schedules look different. So,
Mhm.
like, where one mom might be able to pick her kids up early and have that time in the afternoon to get it done, so another mom might not come home until 6:30, and that really doesn't. It just stresses her out more to do those things. So, I always tell the people in my program, just do what works for you first and foremost. Like it might be breakfast in the morning, it might be just stuff on the weekends, but having a plan and being intentional about what you're going to do when you do have those few minutes is critical. And I would also say, I think us moms put a whole lot of pressure on ourselves to do all of the jobs that we have in our life perfectly and as a full-time job. And I mean, I've done this myself. My job, my kids, that's not even mentioning like the things that are on my like list for me, things that I want to actually be doing for myself, right?
Mhm.
And so I think the way I think about it is they don't really have to be full-time jobs. It just feels that way. So I think by just simplifying it and creating a very easy plan is the way to get at it. And it sounds so simple, but like, I mean, the way I think about play is we really don't need to sit down and play with our kids for like an hour. That I think that it's the like special moments and the really fun things that they remember. Like if you remember from when you were young, you probably don't remember when your mom sat down and played dolls with you for 2 hours, but you remember like
Mhm.
if you had a, you know, pie fight or like something really fun, it was just a moment,
Mhm.
like did an obstacle course that y'all built one time when you were little, like those little memories stick in your head, but it's not necessarily a long period of time. So the fun that I focus on is like short things. And here's what happened with my brain is like, my brain is telling itself, you don't have time to do this. You don't have time to do this. But I would say, okay, why don't we take 10 minutes? You can even set a timer. Pick an easy activity that takes 5 or 10 minutes. And then even if you have to, I did have to fake it for a while, like you might not really be in it and having fun because your brain is still like worrying around of all the things that you have to do, but you're doing it because you know it's a finite period of time. My brain learned after several that I wasn't lying to it. It's 10 minutes. And then after that, I can get back to the things that I need to do. And so now I have like slowly over time really been able to come to be present in those few minutes. And I have so much more fun too. So I feel a lot more connected with my kids. I have a lot more of these special moments. And my brain knows that in just a few minutes, it can get back to all the other things that it has to do in life. But the fun comes first.
Mhm. Yeah. I think hearing you talk about that is like the pressure that I think moms are feeling, thinking that they have to spend that hour, that 2 hours playing on the floor with their kids is like, wait, I don't have to. Like I can
Right.
like that whole mindset shift that you went through of it doesn't need to be this period of time. It can be those 10, 15 minutes, but it's something that's memorable and
Mhm.
you're doing something specific and it's more fun that way. And
Yep.
to your point, like when you were talking about they're not necessarily remembering the fact that you spent 2 hours on the floor. They're remembering the activity and that you did this specific thing. And it's such a great reminder. Like, yeah, they're not remembering how much time we spent. They're remembering the event and
Right.
the activity itself that you were doing. So I think those are just really great, like, hit home points. And it's almost like you're giving the mom's permission, to switch it up. Like, you don't have to do those 2 hours on the floor. And I think for some of us, like, I have 2 boys and a girl, and sometimes those things that the boys want to do, I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't
Right.
enjoy, or I don't want to play Legos for the 10th day in a row. And I am not that type of creative to build whatever it is that they want to build.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
built my tower. There you go. I can't build the robot and the dragon that they want to build, but my 4-year-old can, and that's great. So I think having that permission to be like, okay, we can do something else, like still do the Legos, but maybe do something else that takes up less time, but can still be entertaining and a great activity. Can you kind of talk about, because I think that would give us more energy, right? Like, feeling that we can do those 10 or 15 minutes and it's okay. And can you kind of give us maybe an example or two of an activity we could do?
Sure. I actually come up with in my program, I have an activity idea list that I generate every month, and it has 5 categories. So
Oh,
fun,
that's
I
so
think, is the
cool.
most important. But so I'll talk about a few of the fun things, and then I'll just mention the other categories. So for like
Okay.
fun, let's see. In October, we're due I try to have a mix of fun weekday fun with your kids, and then maybe some longer things that you could do on the weekend, and also some adulty things, because we need to have fun too. It's not just about the kids.
Right?
So yeah, exactly. So so I have on there, like, buy a little archery set and have an archery competition one day, or what else is on there, like go outside and make an obstacle course and have everybody run it. Or I just bought a long roll of butcher paper, and you can like put it out on the table and have them draw little, like, and you can help them like draw little streets or a little city, and then take little cars and ride them around. This morning on the way to school, we did like the superlative game, or we'll play like car games. So we'll be like, who's the most likely to, do something silly, like who's the most, like, whatever. And then, or you could do like would you rather. We play a lot of car games like that.
I
Or
love that idea. The games in the car.
yeah,
A lot.
yeah.
I like that a lot.
And for adults, sometimes I have like hire a sitter on a Saturday morning instead, and like go to a fun brunch, or have another family over for a game night, or do like a kid-friendly trivia game. I come up with so many every month. They're different every month. But so the other categories on the sheet are community service. So I think this is something that a lot of us value, but it's really hard with young kids to figure out how you're going to introduce them to community service and bring them along for projects, because a lot are really adult focused and hard for them to do. So I'll give like a few, and some of them are, community service is a loose term. Some of it is like, learning things that are important to you, or like learning how to be kind, learning how to share, like that sort of a thing, or very easy things. Like last month I had, set a table up and just give out bottled water to the cars passing by, or like get a little Post-it and write some sweet notes on it and stick them like on some of the cars around you when you go to the grocery, or just little things like that, pay for somebody's coffee behind you. Like, they're simple. And the other one is delegation ideas, because I think this is a huge area where moms need help and really struggle to do. So I give like little simple delegation ideas. Rituals are things that when you don't really have time or energy, like you were saying, to do these things, even if you don't have enough time to do 5 minutes, if you just can't, you're too tired, you're sick, you're so busy with work. Rituals are things that you can do in the course of your day with your kids that just create a little special connection and moment with them, but they don't take any extra time. It's not like a planned activity. So this could be like a silly song you sing while you're brushing your teeth. You're probably doing this stuff now with your kids. Like, maybe it's a sweet bedtime routine. That's a ritual, maybe it's a fun little game you play at dinner, or, in the car, looking out of the window and saying one thing that makes you happy. Like, that's a sort of a ritual that you can do to create that special connection, even when you don't feel like doing an activity or you don't have time for it. And the last one is self-care, because it's so important, but
Yes.
it does look really different in this phase of life. So I'm never going to suggest to you to go take like an hour-long bubble bath, because we just don't have time for that right now. So they're just very easy things. And it's just like to create a little happy in you, or, you know, make a little moment where you smile or let go, or, you know, sing a song, belt a song out in the car, or whatever it might. Buy yourself something something decadent. Like the other day, I bought myself this little peel off hand mask. Like, it's just random, but it made me
Right.
smile, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the gist, is just to help moms focus on what's important through the month and make it so easy.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of really great pieces in there that you touched on that I want to kind of go back to a little bit. So I loved when you were talking about rituals, and it kind of got me thinking, like, there are things that we are probably doing that we're not realizing
Yeah.
are these rituals, like you were talking about, like the silly song you sing when they're brushing their teeth or in the car or whatever. Like, you are probably already doing a lot of these ritual type things and creating these memories without even realizing it. And then you're probably giving yourself this guilt that you're not doing that specific activity that you think you have to do, when in reality, you already are doing some really great fundamental pieces. So I
So
think
true.
having you talk about that with the rituals, I think I'm hopeful too that a lot of us listening are like, oh my gosh, I do something like that. Like, okay, I am doing something.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
going at it from that positive side of it than the negative. So I kind of just wanted to point that out and be like, you are doing something, mom. You're doing it. Okay.
100%. Can I tell you a quick story
Yes,
about one of the
absolutely.
girls who was in my she was a founding member of the group. She called me
Mhm.
one day and she just said, I can't be in this program anymore because it's just causing me so much more stress and guilt. Like, I just feel like I'm falling behind. I feel like guilty that I'm looking at this list and I don't have time to do it every week and every month. And I
Mhm.
was like, no, please do not. Exactly what you're saying. Like, you are doing stuff with your kids. You are a really good mom. Your kids know
Right.
it. It's not about falling behind or feeling guilty for what you're not doing. It's just, what can I add? Take one activity a week. You don't have to do 10 a week. Do
Right.
one, you know? I
Mhm.
mean, your kids will remember that when they're looking back. They're not going to remember the quantity either. Like, it can be so simple. These
Right.
rituals can just really really help when you just feel like you don't have the bandwidth. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really great point. Like, just you are doing something and it's changing that mindset around how you're seeing yourself and how you're seeing your day and your activities and what you're doing. So hopefully people, as they're listening and going out throughout their day, the rest of the day, then kind of think about that in the back of their head. What did I do today that was actually an activity that was a positive interaction with my kids? And then giving ourselves that credit for the things that we are doing, and then doing that self-care like you talked about. Because I see that all the time and it drives me crazy. These people online like talking about, oh, for self-care, you have to go do that bubble bath. You have to go do a spa day. You have to go get your
yes.
nails done. And I'm over here like you saying, no, you don't have to. Like,
Right.
I'm in the season of life where I have to do my own nails sometimes, or, doing that hand mask that you talked about. Like, it's those little things that you can do at home in those couple of minutes. Like, I like to have a cup of tea and read a book for fun at the end of the day. That's something I enjoy doing. That's my self-care. And
Mhm.
that costs me however much a box of tea costs, and it
Exactly.
lasts me a month. But it's those little self-care pieces that I love that you brought up, and that you're obviously in support of, that it's okay to acknowledge the season of life that you're in with having little kids and having to meet these different expectations that you have in these different parts of life, and knowing that your self-care can be those little stuff. I know one of the ones that some people get frustrated with me over is, I say that grocery shopping by yourself can be a self-care thing. Like, I miss that.
I do too. I
I
like being
miss
in the
that.
grocery
Like,
store.
I like going to the grocery store by myself because I can think and I
Mhm.
can plan out different meals in the grocery store based on what's fresh and what's available to me, instead of making that grocery list. So it's just one of my little things that I like to do. And people are like, no, that's not self-care. It can be. Okay, it can be.
It is for me.
Right. And that's what matters. It's what it is for you.
Mhm.
And we're all different. So that's all it comes down to. So with all of that, we talked a lot about the different parts of our day, our energy levels, a little bit about your group, which we're going to circle back to because that sounds like a really great group. And I love the name for it, I just have to say.
Thanks.
I really like the name. But with all of that, Lauren, how can we reframe this phase of life to be more intentional and realistic about what's achievable? Like you kind of talked on it a little bit where you had that mom who felt like she wasn't doing enough.
Yeah.
How can we kind of flip the script and feel like we are doing enough and see those moments a little bit clearer?
Yeah. I think I was saying moms are so hard on themselves.
Mhm.
I think that we're getting it from all over. We get this script we get from, talking with other moms or seeing other moms from afar. We see it on social media. I think that we're just inundated with this message of like, you have to just hustle all the time. And we wear it like a badge of honor, right? So it's like, I think it's time that we reframe how we're looking at what it means to be a successful mom, because our kids know that we love them. We're good parents, but I mean, I don't know if you feel this way, but I really don't want to go through the next 10 years more of my life feeling like I'm just stressed out every day.
Mhm.
So I think it's about taking a step back and saying, like, what is important to me and my family? What kind of tone do I want to set in my house? Because I remember when my kids were young and I had my baby books, they had like 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12. And then when the last book came, my kids were turning toddlers. I was like, where's the toddler book? I need that. And so I think a lot of us go into the phase without a strong plan of how to attack it or get at it. I don't want to say attack. So we don't have a strong plan of how we're going to get at it. So I think it's like, it doesn't take very long. You can sit down with your spouse and say, what's the culture that we want for our family? How do we want our family to look and feel, right? It just takes a few minutes and then you sort of have an idea. And then I think it can all trickle down from there. And like I said, making it as easy as possible, but just recognizing like, this is the phase of life that I'm in, and it looks a lot different than my other phases of life. And it's a lot more active, but if you have your priorities and what your priorities are, like mine, I have identified are myself. Let's start with that.
Mhm.
My career, my family, and then my loved ones and my family around me. And so I just keep those in mind and say, like, I'm going to hit those in the easiest way possible. And like everything else can sort of fall away. So, yeah.
Yeah. Those are some great points. I like the priority piece that you mentioned. Knowing what those are, I think, is so important. Like we don't always know what's a priority, or what we think is a priority maybe isn't a priority right now. And then it switches and it changes. And there's nothing wrong with your priorities changing a little bit as time goes on and as your life evolves and changes. Like we talked about in the beginning, going from corporate to self-employment, like that's a huge priority shift.
Yes.
When you think about it. So, Lauren, with all of this, you offer some really great resources and great support to moms that need a little bit more. And I love that you have this community, this village. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your program with this village that you have for moms?
Sure. Okay, so I call it Rally the Village, and I really think of our village today as being very different than the village of the old days when everyone was living close to each other or you had multi-generational families living under the same roof. It just looks different today. And so I think approaching it from a modern day perspective is critical for our success in this frame. So it's not necessarily gathering all of the people around you. It's how to set yourself up for success as a mom and with your family. So my program, The Village, is a monthly membership program. It's $30 a month, and it feels very easy every week, but the purpose is to sort of, I do a lot of the behind the scenes things that take moms a lot of time in the week and that I think cause a lot of mental stress. So it's like looking ahead. So every week there's an email that comes out. You sort of get a 1 week email, and then there's a private Instagram page that I use to support moms through the week. But the email should only take you a few minutes to go through, and it has the activity idea list that I mentioned and a quick I call it my weekly fridge sheet. It's like making a 5-minute plan on a Sunday of picking the things off the activity idea sheet and putting it on the calendar and looking, what's happening with work and with the kids and social activities. But if it's not written down for me, I just don't do it. I have the best intentions and I'll get to the end of the week and say like, oh, I meant to do this thing and I forgot. But if it's written down, I'm like 90% more likely to do it. So that is like your 5-minute plan. And then I have a heads up. So I think we all spend a lot of time in our head thinking like, oh my gosh, did I forget something? Wait, did I remember everything? Am I doing everything I need to be? Oh, I forgot to do this. Like this week, for instance, it's like Halloween is coming up. If your kids are in school, do they have their little Halloween gift baggies that they need to hand out to their classmates? I mean, I used to forget that stuff until the 11th hour. And then I'm on the night before, like scrambling and trying to
I know,
pull it
I'm
all
having
together.
that moment right now. I'm like, wait, what?
I know it causes so much stress of trying to remember what's coming up. So I give that to the moms in our program. And then I also just recently added meal plans, which is a huge stressor. So I have a weekly dinner plan every week, and they're super simple recipes, throw together in definitely 30 minutes or less, usually less time. So yeah, that's kind of the crux of it.
That's awesome. I love that you brought up the meal stuff because that's always, like you said, a huge barrier, I think, for a lot of us as moms. We get so hung up on meal times, especially if we're home all day. Like, okay, it's not just dinner, it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the 20 snacks between the day. But
they just keep eating every day. They need to eat every single day.
Right? It's nonstop. And they only eat certain foods, which does not help. And then we copy each other. My 4-year-old is in the picky stage, and now my almost 2-year-old is in the copy stage. So if Big Brother doesn't eat it, he's not going to eat it, even though he ate it last week.
I know. It's a constant struggle. I can't say I've perfected it in my own house. I kind of go through waves with it, but it's a constant struggle. But at least we can make dinner easier. At least I can give you a plan and give you some easy recipes, and that hopefully will help you.
Right. I totally agree with that. Like, 1 week you're on top of it, like, yes, I'm super mom. I got them. They're eating their dinner. They're eating their veggies. And the next week, nope, done.
Here's some cereal. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the mac and cheese and the dino nuggets, but it's balanced and there's nothing wrong with it.
That's right.
So I love that you have that too, because I think, especially like myself too, like that was always one of those big things that you get hung up on. What's for dinner? And then that's always in the back of your head. I feel like all day long and for everything else, but I feel like that's always a nagging one. What's for dinner? What's for dinner?
Yeah. And if you work out of the house, like you come home at the end of the day, you open up your fridge and you're like, what are we going to eat? I mean, that's the worst feeling. It's right. So stressful. Yeah.
Or get home from work. This is when I was really good at like, oh, I forgot to defrost.
Yes.
Because you buy your meat in bulk sometimes. It's like, oh, I forgot to defrost that. Now I don't know what we're going to have. Yeah. So I totally get that. And I love that you have that with part of your group. So Lauren, outside of your group, how can people connect with you and maybe learn more about getting involved in your group and just more of you? How can they connect?
Sure. I am Rally the Village across all the platforms. So my website is rallythevillage.com. My Instagram is Rally the Village. And I also have a freebie. If anybody wants to grab it, I will give the link and you can put it in the notes. And it's 5 things that moms can take off their plate this week.
Ooh, love that. Yeah. Love that. We'll definitely need to make sure that people can get access to that, because I think we can all do it.
Yeah, it's stuff that you can put into practice like right away. If you can catch a trend, like I am not asking, there's no heavy effort involved in anything. It's just like pick this up and use it, run with it. That's the goal.
Perfect. I think that's what we need, that quick and easy, just here's your win.
Yeah. We all need one, right?
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Lauren, for coming on and talking with us today about balancing it all as moms and finding that time to spend with our kids and prioritizing those activities over quantity of time. Sure. I think it was such a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Mama. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I know you have a lot going on, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope this episode gave you new energy to tackle the day. If so, could you leave a review and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode? That would mean the world to me. I'd also love to connect with you on Instagram, so send me a DM and let me know if this episode was helpful. I love hearing from you. Remember, Mama, you got this. Until next time, I'm Jessa Ray, and this is Caught Up in Motherhood.